The hum of the starship's engines resonated through the corridors as Commander Lysandra Reese paced the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space. She was used to the silence of deep space, the eerie calm that came with it, but this silence felt different. It was pregnant with anticipation, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Her team of scientists and engineers had been preparing for this mission for months, but now, as they neared their destination, Lysandra could sense the growing tension among them. It all started with the signal, an anomalous transmission that had appeared on Earth's deep space listening posts. At first, it was dismissed as background noise, a random flare from a distant star, or perhaps a glitch in the equipment. But when the signal persisted, it began to attract attention. The message was simple, yet profoundly unsettling. A series of pulses, followed by a single word, truth. No one knew where it had come from, but the transmission was undeniably artificial. Its precision, its rhythmic pattern, suggested it was a deliberate communication. The question was, from whom, and what did they want? The very nature of the message seemed to beckon to something deep within the human psyche, a need to understand, to uncover secrets, to know the truth of the universe, no matter the cost. Lysandra, a seasoned officer of the United Human Fleet, had seen her share of strange phenomena in her years of service. Alien artifacts, first contact with distant civilizations, and uncharted worlds all seemed to blur together in the endless expanse of the galaxy. But something about this mission felt different. It wasn't just the destination, a distant star system at the edge of known space. It was the message itself. Truth wasn't just a word, it was a call, one that resonated with something ancient, something primal. She turned away from the view, facing the crew that had assembled in the briefing room. The team was diverse, a mix of the brightest minds and most capable soldiers, each one handpicked for this mission. The room was filled with a low murmur of conversation as the last of the crew members filtered in, but Lysandra's presence silenced them instantly. She stood at the front of the room, her posture straight, her eyes scanning the faces of those who would be traveling with her. "This is not a routine mission," she began, her voice calm, but carrying a weight that made everyone sit up straighter. "We've received a signal from an unknown source, one that's been deliberately sent. We don't know who sent it or why, but the message is clear, truth, and we will find it." A low murmur swept through the room. Some were eager, others skeptical, but all were intrigued. The senior science officer, Dr. Evan Cross, stepped forward, his usual enthusiasm tempered with caution. "Commander, we've run the numbers," he said, his fingers dancing over a holographic display that sprang to life in front of him. "This signal is coming from a star system that hasn't been mapped. The closest planet is uninhabited, based on our preliminary scans. But the signal doesn't match anything we've encountered before." Lysandra nodded, her gaze steady. "It doesn't need to match anything we've encountered. This mission is about breaking new ground. We're heading into the unknown, and we need to be prepared for anything." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one questioned her authority. Lysandra had led them into dangerous situations before, and they trusted her judgment. Still, as the starship sped toward the unknown, an unspoken question hung in the air. What would they find on the other side of this message? Was the truth worth the risk? And more importantly, who had sent the signal, and why? The starship hummed with a steady rhythm as it approached the uncharted system, the distant stars growing brighter with each passing moment. The crew had been on edge since the briefing, the excitement palpable in the air, but now, as they neared their destination, a sense of foreboding settled over them. The unknown always carried danger, and the sense that they were on the verge of uncovering something monumental did little to calm their nerves. Lysandra stood at the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the screen as the distant star system loomed before them. "Prepare for orbit," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Dr. Cross, run the final scans of the planet." Dr. Evan Cross, the lead scientist, quickly adjusted the readings, his eyes flickering over the data. The planet they were targeting was an oddity, a rocky world orbiting a dying red star, its surface mostly uncharted. Preliminary scans had suggested an inhospitable environment, devoid of life. But the anomaly, the signal that had beckoned them here, was undeniable. The coordinates led straight to a barren moon orbiting the planet. "Commander," Dr. Cross said, his voice tinged with disbelief, "there's a massive structure here. We didn't see it on earlier scans, but it's huge, far too large to be a natural formation. It's made of materials we can't identify." Lysandra felt a chill run down her spine. She'd known this mission would uncover something extraordinary, but this was beyond what she had expected. "Can we get a closer look?" Already plotting the course, Cross responded, his fingers flying over the controls. The ship descended into the moon's atmosphere, cutting through the eerie, dim light of the red sun. As they drew closer, the outline of the structure became visible, an immense, metallic tower rising out of the barren landscape like the finger of some ancient god. Its shape was angular and precise, far too symmetrical to be anything natural. It seemed to pulse with an energy that defied understanding, casting long shadows across the moon's desolate surface. Lysandra's heart raced as the ship settled into a nearby landing zone. "All teams, prepare to disembark. Stay sharp. We don't know what we're dealing with." The crew moved swiftly, geared up and ready for whatever awaited them. Lysandra led the team out onto the surface, her boots crunching against the moon's dusty terrain. The windless air felt cold and oppressive, the only sound the steady thrum of the ship's engines powering down behind them. The structure loomed over them, its surface reflecting the dim light of the dying star. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, carved with sharp, intricate designs that twisted and spiraled in patterns that defied logic. They approached the entrance, a massive archway that seemed to beckon them forward, but a lingering sense of unease kept them on edge. Inside, the air was thick with an odd energy, the walls humming with a low, vibrating sound. Holographic panels flickered to life as they moved deeper into the structure, revealing strange symbols and alien markings that shifted and changed before their eyes. The entire place seemed alive, a living monument to an unknown civilization. Dr. Cross approached one of the panels, his eyes wide with excitement. "These symbols, they're unlike any written language we've encountered. It's like they're not meant to be read, but experienced." Lysandra's hand hovered over her sidearm, the sense that they were not alone growing stronger with each passing moment. There was a deep silence in the air, as if the entire structure was waiting for something. She gestured for the team to move forward cautiously, every instinct telling her that the discovery they were about to make would change everything. As they advanced deeper into the labyrinthine corridors, the structure seemed to shift, the walls narrowing, the floor undulating slightly beneath their feet. And then, at the very heart of the place, they found it. A massive chamber, dominated by a towering, intricately designed device at its center. It pulsed with an energy that seemed to draw them in, and the team stood in awe, mesmerized by its sheer presence. Lysandra stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. They had found it, the source of the signal, the key to the truth they sought. But as she reached out to examine the device, the temperature in the room plummeted, and an overwhelming sense of dread swept over her. Something was about to happen, something that would test them all in ways they couldn't yet understand. "Commander," Dr. Cross said, his voice shaking, "I don't think we're alone." Lysandra's heart pounded in her chest as she turned toward Dr. Cross, the weight of his words sinking in. The air in the chamber grew thick with tension, the strange hum of the device at the center intensifying. It was as if the structure itself had awakened, aware of their presence. The walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with the device, and a low, otherworldly whisper filled the room, barely audible but unmistakable. The crew members exchanged uneasy glances, their eyes wide with fear and fascination. Lysandra could feel the pull of the device, the need to understand, to unlock the mysteries it promised. But a cold chill ran down her spine. Something about this place felt wrong, unnatural. The message they had followed here, the word truth, now carried an ominous weight. "Stay alert," Lysandra ordered, her voice steady despite the rising unease. "We don't know what this device is capable of. Dr. Cross, is there any way to safely interact with it?" Cross studied the device with a mix of awe and caution. His fingers hovered over his tablet, scanning the data, but his face was pale. "It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. The readings are fluctuating wildly. I'm detecting energy surges, but they're not like anything produced by our technology." Lysandra glanced around the chamber, her instincts telling her to be careful. The team had come here for answers, but now, with the device looming before them, she wasn't sure they were prepared for what it would reveal. "Commander," one of the soldiers, Lieutenant Rowe, spoke up. "There's something happening. The air, it feels heavier." Lysandra nodded. The atmosphere was thick with something else now, a presence that seemed to watch them, lurking just beyond the edge of their perception. The device pulsed again, and without warning, a blinding light exploded from it. The crew staggered back, shielding their eyes, but the light didn't fade, it enveloped them. The room dissolved around them as their vision filled with swirling images, overwhelming their senses. For a brief moment, the universe itself seemed to stretch out before them, a kaleidoscope of galaxies, stars, and nebulas. And then, they saw it. A vision of creation, the birth of the universe, the primal forces that shaped it, and the rise and fall of civilizations that had come before them. Worlds destroyed, civilizations crushed beneath the weight of their own ambition. Endless cycles of birth and death, of knowledge sought and lost. Lysandra felt a sharp pain in her mind as the visions intensified, each one more vivid and terrifying than the last. She gasped for breath, feeling as though her very soul was being torn apart by the sheer weight of what she was witnessing. But even as the visions twisted her reality, a part of her couldn't look away. The truth was being revealed to her, to all of them. But the truth came at a price. Some of the crew collapsed, their minds unable to handle the flood of information. Dr. Cross was muttering to himself, his eyes wide with terror as he clawed at his face. Too much to comprehend. Lysandra struggled to maintain control, her mind teetering on the edge of madness. The images became more fragmented, more chaotic, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded. The room returned to its dark, oppressive stillness, but something had changed. The crew members who had been affected by the visions now stood in silence, their faces blank. Their eyes, once filled with purpose, now seemed hollow, distant. Lysandra's breath came in shallow gasps, her body trembling as she realized what had happened. The truth had been revealed, but it had cost them more than they could ever have anticipated. We've seen it," Cross whispered, his voice broken. "The universe, it's not what we thought. It was never meant to be understood. This was a test." Lysandra's stomach twisted with dread as she looked around the room. A test? A test for what? Cross shook his head, his eyes empty. "A test for those who dare to seek the truth. We've passed it, but now we must pay the price." The cost of knowledge was no longer just a theoretical concept. Lysandra realized, with chilling clarity, that the device had shown them the universe's true nature, its endless cycles of creation and destruction, its infinite mysteries and hidden dangers, and it had changed them. She wasn't sure if they could ever go back to who they were before. The truth had already begun to unravel them, and there was no telling how much more they could endure. The truth had been unlocked, but now, Lysandra knew, they had to survive it. The silence in the chamber was deafening, the air thick with the weight of their discovery. Lysandra stood motionless, her mind reeling from the flood of knowledge they had just experienced. The crew was scattered around the chamber, their faces pale, their bodies trembling. Some were staring into space, their expressions vacant, while others had their hands pressed to their temples, trying to make sense of the unrelenting visions that still clung to their minds. It was then that the ground beneath them began to shake. At first, it was subtle, a faint tremor beneath their feet, barely noticeable. But within seconds, the vibrations intensified, growing in frequency and power. Lysandra instinctively reached for her sidearm, her hand trembling as she grasped the weapon. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of what was happening. "Something's wrong," Lieutenant Rowe muttered, his voice thick with anxiety. This wasn't part of the plan. Lysandra's instincts screamed at her to get the team out of there, but it was too late. The walls of the chamber groaned, the ancient structure seeming to come alive. The pulsing energy from the device grew louder, its hum turning into a low, resonating growl. Suddenly, the floor beneath them cracked open with a violent shudder, and from the depths of the structure, something emerged. It was massive, towering over them, its form taking shape in the dim light. It resembled a towering figure of metal and organic matter, a strange fusion of technology and biology. Its eyes glowed with a cold, predatory light, and its massive, armored limbs moved with mechanical precision. The creature's body was covered in intricate designs, much like the symbols on the walls of the chamber, but its movements were purposeful, deliberate, as though it had been waiting for something. The team recoiled in fear, but Lysandra stood her ground, her hand gripping her weapon tighter. She had been trained to face unknown threats, but nothing could have prepared her for this. The creatures, began to emerge from the shadows. More followed, all of them resembling the first, their forms shifting in the dim light like phantoms. There were dozens of them, each one an imposing figure of metal and flesh, their eyes locked on the humans as they advanced slowly. Dr. Cross, his mind still reeling from the earlier revelations, stumbled backward. "Guardians," he whispered, barely audible. "They're the Guardians." Lysandra's eyes narrowed. The term sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. What did it mean? And why were they here? As if sensing her confusion, one of the creatures spoke, its voice low and guttural. "You have awakened us." Lysandra's heart skipped a beat. The creature's voice was not human, but it was unmistakably intelligent. Its words sent a chill through her, and she instinctively raised her weapon, though she had no idea how effective it would be against such a being. "What are you?" Lysandra demanded, her voice steady despite the rising terror in her chest. The creature tilted its head, a movement that felt almost thoughtful. "We are the Guardians, the keepers of the truth. We were created to protect the knowledge you seek, and now, you have disturbed it." Lysandra's mind raced. The device had revealed the truth of the universe, but in doing so, it had also triggered the awakening of these ancient protectors. These Guardians were not here to help them, they were here to stop them. The price of uncovering the truth was becoming clearer with each passing moment. "We did not come to desecrate your secrets," Lysandra said, her voice firm. "We came to learn. We only want to understand." The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter, and the air around them seemed to grow heavier. "You seek understanding," it said, its tone cold and dispassionate. "But knowledge comes with a cost. You were not ready for what you found, and now, you must face the consequences." Before Lysandra could respond, the Guardians began to move in unison, their mechanical limbs clicking in a deadly rhythm. The temperature in the chamber dropped suddenly, the cold biting into their skin, as if the very air around them was growing hostile. "We will ensure that you never seek again," the lead Guardian said, its voice echoing in the now icy chamber. "You are unworthy." Lysandra's mind raced. They had come here seeking answers, but now they were facing an entirely new threat, an enemy born of an ancient alien civilization, tasked with guarding the most dangerous truths of the cosmos. The knowledge they had unlocked was too much, and the Guardians would not allow them to take it any further. With a sharp, commanding gesture, Lysandra barked, "Prepare for combat. We're not leaving without answers." The crew, though shaken, fell into formation. They may have been outmatched, but they weren't about to give up without a fight. The Guardians were coming, and now, it was a battle for survival. The air in the chamber was thick with tension as Lysandra and her team braced for the assault. The Guardians, towering and relentless, advanced with a chilling sense of purpose, their glowing eyes locked on the crew. The mechanical thuds of their movements reverberated through the room, echoing off the walls as they closed the distance. Lysandra's grip on her weapon tightened, her pulse quickening as she signaled to her team to take defensive positions. "Stay focused," she said, her voice sharp. "We can't afford to panic." The soldiers scrambled to set up a perimeter, but Lysandra's gaze never left the lead Guardian. It was enormous, its form an intimidating blend of metal and organic tissue, its movements precise and calculated. They were up against something ancient, far beyond anything they had ever encountered. And yet, it wasn't the Guardians that worried her most. It was the nagging feeling that something else was at play, something within their own ranks. As the Guardians closed in, Lysandra noticed Dr. Cross standing slightly apart from the group, his eyes darting nervously. His hands trembled as he fiddled with his tablet, but there was something off about him, an unease in his posture that didn't sit right. It wasn't the kind of fear a scientist would show when faced with danger. It was the kind of fear someone felt when they were hiding something. "Dr. Cross," Lysandra called out sharply, "get into position." Cross flinched at the sound of her voice, but instead of moving, he took a step backward, his expression growing more frantic. We don't understand what we're dealing with here," he stammered, his voice wavering. "The Guardians, they were never meant to be awakened. This is bigger than all of us." Lysandra frowned, her instincts kicking in. "What are you talking about? You're not making sense." Cross hesitated, his eyes flickering toward the Guardians as they began to circle the crew, their presence like a suffocating weight. Then, with a sudden motion, he pushed a hidden button on his wristband, and the chamber's lighting flickered ominously. Before Lysandra could react, the ground beneath their feet trembled once more, and the walls of the chamber seemed to close in around them. The Guardians stopped, their heads turning in unison toward Cross, as he raised his hands in surrender. "You should have never come here," he muttered, his voice cold and distant. "The truth isn't for you to claim. It was never meant to be." Lysandra's heart sank as realization hit her with brutal force. You led us here. You've been hiding something from us all along." Cross didn't respond. Instead, his eyes grew distant, as if lost in the grip of something far greater than himself. The Guardians, sensing his shift in demeanor, stepped back slightly, giving him room to speak. "They've been watching us," he continued, his voice hollow. "The Guardians, they've been guiding humanity's path, influencing us from the shadows, pushing us to evolve, to seek knowledge. They're not just protectors, they're manipulators. They created this mission. They created me." Lysandra's breath caught in her throat. "You're saying they orchestrated all of this? The signal? The mission? Why?" Cross turned to face her, his eyes empty, as if he were already beyond saving. "Humanity wasn't ready. But you, Commander, you were always the one they wanted. You were the key. You've always been the one meant to uncover the truth, no matter the cost." His words hung in the air like a poisonous fog, and Lysandra felt a chill run through her as the true depth of the betrayal sank in. They hadn't been sent to uncover a hidden truth. They had been led here, manipulated into playing their part in a grand, cosmic game. The Guardians hadn't been dormant. They had been waiting for Lysandra, waiting for humanity to come to them. "You knew this all along, didn't you?" Lysandra's voice was low, barely a whisper, but it felt like a punch to the gut. "You knew the price we'd have to pay." Cross looked at her with a mixture of guilt and resignation. "I didn't have a choice. I was chosen to bring you here. But now that you've seen what's hidden, now that you know the truth, there's no turning back. You'll never be the same again." Lysandra's hand clenched into a fist. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. She had trusted him, trusted Cross to be a leader, a guide, and instead, he had led them straight into the heart of a conspiracy so vast it shook the very foundation of their mission. She wasn't sure if she could trust anyone anymore. The Guardians, sensing the tension between them, shifted closer, their movements deliberate. But now, Lysandra wasn't sure if they were there to protect the truth, or to ensure it remained buried forever. "What happens now?" Lysandra demanded, her voice steady but filled with rage. Cross smiled faintly, his eyes dark. "Now, we find out what happens when humanity challenges the Guardians." The weight of his words hung in the air like a ticking bomb. The battle was no longer just about survival. It was about something much darker. And as the Guardians closed in, Lysandra knew that the true test was only just beginning. Lysandra's mind raced, the weight of Cross's betrayal pressing down on her like a physical force. The walls of the chamber seemed to close in, the temperature dropping as the Guardians continued their silent advance. She had always believed in the mission, their purpose to uncover the truth, to push the boundaries of human knowledge. But now, with the shocking revelation that everything had been orchestrated, she wasn't sure who or what she could trust anymore. Cross had led them here, but the Guardians weren't simply protectors of the truth. They were the architects of humanity's path, controlling the very choices they thought they had made. "Why?" Lysandra demanded, her voice edged with fury. "Why manipulate us? Why bring us here just to watch us suffer?" Cross didn't meet her gaze. Instead, he stared at the Guardians, his expression almost serene. "Because humanity isn't ready for the truth, but you were never meant to be the one to decide. The Guardians have seen your potential. They knew you'd come, that you'd push the limits of what you could understand. But you're too small, too fragile to comprehend what lies beyond the veil of your limited existence. You have the potential to destroy everything. That's why they had to guide you. You've opened the door, and now they will decide what happens next." The Guardians, silent and imposing, encircled the group, their presence suffocating. Lysandra's breath came in short gasps, and her mind flashed through every decision that had led them to this moment. Each choice, each step, had been part of a carefully laid plan. They hadn't been adventurers seeking truth. They had been pawns, unknowingly walking into a trap of cosmic proportions. "You've lost your mind," she spat, fury bubbling in her chest. "We're not your puppets, Cross. We're human beings." Cross's face remained impassive, and the Guardians stood motionless, as though waiting for the next move. Lysandra felt the weight of their judgment in the air, the suffocating silence pressing in on her. The realization hit her with devastating clarity. The Guardians weren't here to help humanity. They were here to shape it, to control it, to determine when, or if, the truth could ever be fully revealed. A sense of betrayal filled Lysandra's chest, but as she looked at her crew, something else began to form, an overwhelming sense of responsibility. They had come here as explorers, as seekers, but now they were faced with an impossible decision. They could surrender to the Guardians, accept that they were not meant to know, and live in ignorance, or they could fight, even knowing that their resistance could lead to their destruction. "You don't have to do this," Lysandra said, her voice low, but unwavering. "You don't have to side with them, Cross. There's still time to stop this." Cross's eyes flickered with something resembling regret, but it was fleeting. "I can't stop it, Commander. You've already opened the door. There's no going back." The Guardians shifted, their movements synchronized, and the chamber seemed to vibrate with a low hum as their forms began to glow brighter. Lysandra could feel the pressure in the air intensify, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to make her choice. "I won't let humanity fall to your will," Lysandra said, her voice firm. "We are not your tools. I will fight for our future." Cross's lips curled into a sad, almost pitying smile. "You can try, but the choice is already made. You've opened the truth, and now the Guardians will decide what happens next." Lysandra felt the weight of his words, but she wasn't ready to surrender, not yet. The crew's eyes were on her, waiting for direction. They were in this together, and no matter what Cross or the Guardians believed, they still had one choice left to make: to fight for their survival or give in to the fate the Guardians had planned for them. The Guardians stepped closer, their towering forms casting long shadows over the crew, and Lysandra's heart pounded in her chest. The final decision was hers, and in that moment, with the truth of the universe unfolding before her, Lysandra knew she had to make the hardest choice of all. Would she trust in humanity's ability to overcome, or would she succumb to the will of beings far older and wiser than they could ever hope to be? The chamber seemed to grow colder, the shadows deepening, as the Guardians loomed ever closer. The time to act had come. Lysandra stood frozen in the face of the Guardians, their glowing eyes fixed on her with an unblinking, unwavering stare. The chamber was filled with an eerie silence, the air heavy with the weight of the decision she was about to make. She could feel the tension building, every moment stretching into infinity. The Guardians, ancient and powerful, were waiting for her to submit. Cross, once a trusted ally, now stood as their accomplice, his allegiance to them clear. She had to make a choice: resist or surrender. Her mind raced, the truth of what they had uncovered gnawing at her. The universe was far older and more complex than they could have ever imagined. The Guardians weren't just protectors of knowledge, they were gatekeepers, the sentinels of a reality that humankind was never meant to fully understand. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them, Lysandra couldn't shake the belief that humanity deserved more than to be shackled by fear and control. They had the right to know the truth, no matter the cost. "You've seen the truth," the lead Guardian's voice rumbled, its deep, resonating tone filling the chamber. "You understand now what lies beyond the veil. You know the price that comes with it. We were created to protect that knowledge, to ensure that no species would awaken too early. Humanity was never meant to rise beyond its place." Lysandra's heart hammered in her chest, but her resolve remained firm. "You don't get to decide that for us. We are not your puppets. We have a right to know, a right to choose." The Guardian's eyes flickered with something resembling amusement, though its expression remained impassive. "You think you understand the burden of knowledge. You think your species is ready for the truth. You are but children playing in the ruins of the cosmos, too small to grasp the vastness of what you've uncovered." Lysandra's voice trembled with a mixture of anger and determination. "We may be small, but that doesn't mean we can't grow. We won't let you control us any longer." As the Guardian spoke, something stirred in Lysandra's mind, a shift, as if the universe itself were pulling her toward a deeper understanding. The device, the visions, the awakening of the Guardians, it had all been a part of something far greater than she had realized. She had felt it before, the strange pull, but now, in this moment, she could see it clearly. The truth wasn't just about knowledge, it was about potential. Humanity had always been destined for something more, but the Guardians had kept them in the dark, watching from the shadows as the world turned, manipulating their path, steering them away from what they could truly become. The revelations weren't just in the knowledge they had unlocked, they were in the choices they made in the face of the unknown. "You're wrong," Lysandra said, her voice steady now, cutting through the oppressive silence. "We will choose our own destiny. We will decide what we become. If humanity is to fall, then let it fall on its own terms, not because you've decided we're not ready." The Guardians seemed to hesitate for the first time, their movements slowing. For a moment, the weight of their power seemed to falter, the grip they had on the crew loosening. The air shifted, and for a split second, Lysandra thought they might back down. But the lead Guardian's voice cut through the tension, its tone heavy with finality. "Then prepare for the consequences. You have awakened something far more dangerous than you understand. The truth you sought has a cost, and now, you will face it." A pulse of energy surged through the chamber, bright and blinding, as the Guardians raised their arms. The walls of the structure shuddered, and Lysandra felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. The truth they had sought, the power they had unlocked, was no longer just a concept. It was a force, one that had the potential to destroy everything they had worked for, or to reshape the very fabric of the universe itself. As the light grew brighter, Lysandra's thoughts were consumed by one single realization. The final revelation wasn't just about the truth they had uncovered. It was about what they were willing to sacrifice to hold onto it. The choice before them wasn't just survival. It was about the future of humanity itself. Would they cling to their fragile existence, or would they face the truth, no matter the cost? Lysandra's heart pounded in her chest, but in that moment, she knew what she had to do. The battle was far from over, but the war for humanity's future was just beginning. And the blinding light from the Guardian's energy surge grew overwhelming, filling the chamber with an intensity that made it feel as though the very air was alive. Lysandra's eyes burned, but she didn't look away. The truth was within her grasp, and the Guardian's power couldn't shake her resolve. She stood her ground, the weight of her crew's eyes upon her, knowing they depended on her to make the right decision. The lead Guardian's voice echoed, deep and ominous. "You have reached the precipice, Commander. You will either be consumed by the truth or bend to it. There is no other way forward." But Lysandra wasn't listening to the Guardian anymore. She was listening to something deeper, the whisper of humanity's potential, the untapped power that lay dormant in every human heart. She had felt it before, that spark of defiance and determination, and now, in this moment, it burned brighter than ever. She had seen what humanity could become when unshackled, when freed from the chains of fear and control. "We will not bow to you," Lysandra said, her voice cutting through the oppressive silence. "Humanity will stand on its own, and we will decide our fate, not you." The Guardians seemed to recoil, their eyes flashing with something that could almost be described as surprise. For a brief moment, they hesitated, as if they had never considered that humanity might choose defiance over submission. It was then that Lysandra realized the truth of what they had been guarding all this time. It wasn't just knowledge, it was control. Control over the very nature of humanity's future. They had been waiting for the right moment to subdue them, to steer them into a destiny that had already been written. But Lysandra refused to let that happen. "Commander," Dr. Cross's voice rang out, trembling but resolute. "You're right, we've been blind. The Guardians never wanted us to choose. They've been guiding us like sheep, hiding the truth, controlling what we could know. But we have the power to break free, to forge our own future." Lysandra turned to face him, and for the first time, she saw the remorse in his eyes. He wasn't the man he had once been, the man who had betrayed them. He had seen the truth now, the same truth that she had, and together, they had the chance to change everything. The Guardian's form seemed to ripple, as if uncertain how to respond. The energy in the room pulsed, and Lysandra could feel the weight of the universe pressing down on them. But with each passing second, her resolve only grew stronger. "Humanity's future is not yours to control," she continued, stepping forward, her crew following her lead. "We will shape it. We will seek the truth, but we will not let it define us. We are not slaves to our past. We are not bound by the chains of destiny." The Guardian's silence stretched on, as if they were considering her words, calculating the cost of this unexpected turn of events. But in that moment, Lysandra knew something fundamental had shifted. They were no longer the passive subjects of an ancient plan. They were free. The light from the Guardian's energy began to dim, the pressure in the room lifting. The Guardians still stood, but they were no longer the imposing figures they had once seemed. They were, in a strange way, uncertain. And as their forms began to fade into the shadows, the weight of the moment settled over Lysandra and her team. "You have chosen your path," the lead Guardian's voice said, its tone now almost melancholic. "But remember, With knowledge comes responsibility. You have seen what lies beyond, and now, you must live with the consequences of your choice. Lysandra nodded, her voice steady. We will. With that, the guardians disappeared, leaving only the echo of their presence lingering in the chamber. The truth was out there, but it wasn't just a question of discovery anymore. It was a question of what humanity would do with it. The path forward was unclear, the stakes higher than ever, but one thing was certain. Humanity had taken its first step into the unknown, and no one, not even the Guardians, could stop them. Lysandra turned to her crew, their faces reflecting a mixture of awe, fear, and determination. They had come to this place seeking answers, but what they had found was something far greater, the freedom to choose their future. They had been tested, pushed to the brink of their existence, but in the end, it wasn't the Guardians who held power over them. It was humanity itself. We move forward, Lysandra said, her voice firm and resolute. Whatever comes next, we face it together, and we will forge our own path. The crew stood tall, their determination mirrored in Lysandra's eyes. They had unlocked the truth, yes, but more importantly, they had reclaimed their agency. The future of humanity lay in their hands now, and no matter what lay ahead, they were ready to face it.